Hey, Village, welcome to another episode of Womanhood Decoded. I am your host, Tasha Ray. Today, the theme or topic is fighting for our lives. Listen, it is January 2025, but I feel like I need to break out in song and sing, "We shall overcome." You might be wondering, first of all, where is that even from? And is that a Negro spiritual? I'm not sure if it is, but it seems like we have taken, as a nation, a huge leap backwards as it pertains to policy here in America. We have seen how our current administrator and or president has, in just the few days he's been in office, he has attacked the Constitution, which is supposedly the very foundation of our nation. But somehow the Constitution is under attack, along with DEI and various other institutions. Now, if you are unaware of what the term DEI is and you keep hearing it, I'm going to read to you what the internet and or Webster, how they define DEI. DEI is diversity, equality, inclusion, and organizational frameworks which seek to promote the fair treatment and full participation of all people, particularly groups who are or have been historically underrepresented or subject to discrimination on the basis of identity or disability. Now, if you're listening to that and you happen to be a person that is a person of color, or if you are not and you consider yourself to be an ally, I'm struggling with the idea of why certain people believe it's a great idea for us to just attack and roll that back. If you are aware at all of what has gone on historically and what continues to go on in our nation, then you will know that while we have made strides, keyword strides, to undo policies, procedures, and the overall systematic oppression of certain groups and people, I'm just baffled at why we would want to undo or say that's no longer necessary or it's no longer relevant when people are still out here struggling. And you may notice that my voice is having a lot of inflection and a lot of excitement, and that is because I am passionate about this topic. At some point in my educational career, I was the recipient of monies that were allocated to programs having to do with affirmative action. And so I am going to define that. Affirmative action refers to a set of policies and practices within a government or organization seeking to address systemic discrimination. So, if you were a person of color, and if you happened to not come from the tax bracket that essentially says that opens up doors because you belong to it, if you happen to not be in that particular segment of our nation or society, then you would have had to have a program that had elements of affirmative action, because otherwise there would never be the inclusion of minorities because of gatekeeping. And if you are not familiar with gatekeeping, that is the on purpose idea and or network that keeps people out and keeps certain people in. Thank you for joining me online, wherever you might be, whether you are watching from Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, I am grateful for your time. Moving forward, I feel like many of us who are or have benefited from programming having to do with affirmative action or DEI, we feel like our very right to be is under attack. And that is because we have been fighting for equality. We have been fighting for opportunity. We have been fighting for access to resources and opportunities that otherwise are just outside of our reach. And so, particularly in politics, news, law, medicine, sports, the right and the ability to have upward mobility is something that was not only frowned upon, but there was this ideology that if you are in, you should just be happy to be there, as opposed to trying to climb the proverbial ladder. And so when organizations like the Black Congressional Congress or caucus, or the work that the NAACP or the National Association of Black Journalists, and I can continue to name organizations that have been fundamental in establishing protocols as it pertains to DEI and affirmative action. When those programs are under attack, it's like the messaging is you're not wanted, you're not needed, and you're not going to be included moving forward. And I just feel like no matter what it is that you're doing, if you are looking at a dish of food, anything is better when you season it. I don't care what it is. It's better when you season it. And so for me, that's what diversity represents. It represents the splash of color, the splash of thought, the splash of perspective. Because a lot of the times people don't even understand or recognize that they have a bias and or they have an agenda. But as you see, I'm wearing glasses. I'll take them off just to illustrate my point. When I'm not wearing my glasses, everything becomes blurry and I'm unable to read words or see specifics. I can see general things. And in the same way, when you don't have inclusivity and when you don't have diversity, what you will notice is there will be a unilateral and or uniform thought. And unless there is another voice at the table to chime in and say, well, everybody might view things from this perspective, I want you to understand that my life and my journey comes from this perspective. And so hopefully that landed. If it didn't, stick with me. I just want everyone to know that while I think it is paramount and important for us to continue to build Black businesses, to support Black businesses, to buy Black, I think that the idea that we can get to everywhere we need to get to separate of allies from other nationalities, other groups, other organizations will be to our detriment. I feel that we need to work together to solve this problem. I feel like it is not just a problem that is ours. I feel like it is, when I say ours, I'm talking about everybody that happens to not be white. I feel like it is all of our problem. And I say that particularly as a parent, because when I'm trying to explain to my daughter the importance of all the colors, because my daughter is 5 and she likes purple at this point in her life. So she likes to oftentimes color everything on her page purple. And I will ask her, why? Because there's a whole lot of different colors. And certain things, everything on the page shouldn't be purple. So my daughter told me, I know how to color the right way, but I like to color my way. So I challenged her to color a page the quote unquote right way. And my child actually colored it the right way, in that she put pigmentation on the skin of the person or the princess that was in her coloring book. She colored the dress a different color, and then she colored the crown a different color, and the scepter a different color. But then I gave her the very same picture, and I told her to color that one the way she wanted to color it, and she colored the whole thing purple. And I said, why do you want to color the whole thing purple? And she said, because it's my favorite color, and that's the only color that I like, and that's the only color I want to use. And I feel like as adults, we have the tendency to want to color in one color. We have the idea that if we only utilize, or if we only connect with one group, that first of all, we're going to be safe within our group. And second of all, we insulate ourselves. But I want us to challenge the idea of, when you do that, you are cutting yourself off from opportunity to grow, from opportunity to evolve, and opportunity to learn. And I say this as a veteran of over 23 years as an investigative journalist. So my perspective comes from the idea that I have to research, I have to investigate, then I have to come up with a consensus among what it is that I have been studying, and then I have to disseminate that information to you, the public, and or disperse it, whatever adjective that you want to use there. But the reason I bring that up is because I think it's important to understand that for the longest time, I wasn't really having unique thought, or I wasn't encouraged to have a perspective. I was encouraged to always be in the middle, to always be objective. But sometimes objectivity can be a barrier to progress. And when I say objectivity, I mean the idea that there is no right and there is no wrong. There is just somewhere in the middle. And I feel like when it comes to discrimination, that's one of those topical areas where I can't just in good conscience operate from a perspective of, well, there's this side and there's that side. Discriminating on the basis of gender, on the basis of one's skin or one's ethnicity, or on the basis of who one loves, is, in my opinion, wrong, period. There is no room for, well, depending on how you look at it, discrimination is wrong. Discrimination is wrong in general. And then the fact that I have to even say that, or the fact that we're even speaking about it, again, as I said at the top of this podcast, and it's 2025, we have been, as a people, fighting for our rights, from Jim Crow to civil rights to affirmative action to DEI. In each of these iterations of our nation, we have tried to peel back the intrinsic biases. And when I'm talking about biases, I want it to be clear that bias comes in all shades and all colors, in all walks of life. Bias is not something that is unique to just people that happen to not be people of color. You can have a bias, or a racial bias, or a gender bias, or whatever sort of bias, even if you are a part of a minority group. And I feel like that is something that is not often spoke about, because there's this idea that if I'm a minority, that I can't be biased. Yes, you can. And I feel like all of us need to do the work to check in with ourselves, to check in with our colleagues, our peers, our family, whomever it might be, to hold us accountable. Because a lot of our thinking might be fine, but every now and again, if you verbalize something and you have real people around you, someone is going to say, yeah, that's very problematic. I feel like you might want to shift your focus. If your goal is to connect, then maybe your language needs to be less aggressive, or maybe some of your choices of words or your vernacular, if you are trying to quote unquote cross over and be understood, while it is perfectly fine and acceptable to utilize whatever um, acronyms or sayings that are understood within a group or a particular community, what you will notice is instead of creating community, you're going to be ostracizing those that might actually want to participate. But if every other sentence is filled with wording that, unless you are a part of the community, you will never understand or never be able to tap into, then you will find it hard to make those connections. And then you might be of the thought, well, I don't want to connect with anybody that isn't Black. And I can understand that sentiment. But again, I feel like it is how are we going to ever advance if we are always doing everything separate? Now, of course, there's been a lot of talk, unless you are under a rock, you know that companies like Target and various others have made public statements saying that they are rolling back all policies and procedures as it pertains to DEI, so diversity, equality, and inclusion. And that is problematic. However, we have seen various Black businesses who have fought hard to be able to have their brands validated and seen and sold in mainstream retailers. And while it's great to have your own website and to have your own pipeline to the people, so to speak, when you are able to get into a brand or company like Target, for example, and instead of you being a household name in whatever state you're in, for example, you might be known here in New York or in Brooklyn or whatever for whatever it is that you are selling or whatever your brand or your company is. But now, suddenly you have customers that you would never have the opportunity to connect with and or to sell to if your brand was not available at your local Target, which is somewhere that you can go no matter what state or city you're in. You're going to be able to find a Target. So um, I feel like it is a complex issue. I've been listening to analysts on both sides, some that are saying that, well, we need to build our own institutions in our own way in which we can reach the customer directly. But y'all know that until someone else validates or until someone else says, hey, what you're doing is great, a lot of the times you will not get the support that you feel like you should, even from your own community. What I have experienced personally is it's easy for me to say that my hourly rate for a strategy session or to be a consultant or for me to be an analyst is X amount of dollars. But if I say that same price point within my community, I am often hit with gasp and people clutching for their pearls. And it's like, well, first of all, I've been doing this for quite some time. And so I know my worth, particularly in the marketplace as it pertains to being, like I said, an analyst or a strategist. So I am not going to lowball myself. But if it is something having to do with the kids, or if there is an opportunity for me to teach, I will do that oftentimes free of charge because I believe in opening doors and providing resources and or a blueprint for how to get from A to B. However, when I am working with businesses, I know that if I were to, for example, cut my rate in half, I would not be respected among my peers as it pertains to the work that I do as either a freelance photographer, analyst, or speaker, host, or whatever it might be. And I think that one of the things that I am finding or having pushback from are people that came from the previous generation, from my own, and people that were able to, for example, work one job, whatever it might be, for X amount of years, and then they are able to retire. Well, if you know anything about our current job market inequality, first of all, not too many jobs offer a salary that is going to be conducive to a livable wage. Secondly, no job in and of itself is created for a person to get wealthy. Jobs in and of itself are a system that has been put in place to control the masses. And it's a system where for X amount of hours, unless you are a person that's on the outskirts of society, then you are going to work. You have a 9 to 5 and you're going to be there from this time to that time. If everybody is suddenly working remotely and is suddenly an entrepreneur, you don't know where people may be because all they need is Wi-Fi. And this idea that we have to be within four walls in order to be productive was clearly something that was shattered during COVID because companies continued to run even though people were not in the office. And so this idea that there's only one job and one title in one way to succeed or one way to get from where you are to where you want to be is to do one thing one way is not something that is feasible in today's economy. And as you noticed, I said that I do multiple different things. And so what I've had to do and what I've encouraged other people to do is you have to pivot and you have to find a way to make yourself or to keep yourself relevant. Now, another topic that was in headlines and across all social or most social media platforms was this idea of being a veteran and or utilizing one's celebrity to jump into fields that previously one could not do. So for what I'm talking about, if it's unclear, is people like myself, we were taught that you had to go to school and get a degree in journalism in order to be taken seriously as a journalist. But what you will find is, regardless to if you are talking about journalism, photography, and a couple other careers, you will see that people will oftentimes just take on the title. Hey, Ty, thank you for joining. And they don't have any expertise in whatever field it is. Now, I'm all for learning on the job and for the idea of innovation. However, there are fundamental principles when it comes to collecting information and communicating whatever information that, one, unless you have gone through the quote unquote process, then you won't understand the framework for why things are done in a particular way. So, for example, there are people that oftentimes, like I said, go around with cameras and they say, I'm a photographer. But then if I press them and I say, okay, cool. So, where did you go to school? Where did you study photography? Suddenly it's like, oh, I didn't study. I just bought a camera and now I'm a photographer. Well, in my opinion, you are a person with a camera who happens to, you might have a keen eye, but what you will notice is when you go to apply, keyword apply, for certain roles and jobs, if you do not have an extensive portfolio, whether it is in hard news or editorial work, what you will see is you will not even get a foot in the door. You will not be taken seriously because in order for you to, for example, shoot as a photographer for what's coming up, Fashion Week, here in New York City, if you are trying to be a photographer for a mainstream outlet, you're not even going to be considered because you don't meet the criteria. Now, like I said, if you are just an independent person with a camera and you have a website and you're able to connect to community, you're able to shoot what you shoot, and you're able to create an income, more power to you. Continue to do so. But there is something that is different or that will enable you to be able to get further if you choose to invest in education and training. Because education, in my opinion, is not just for the sake of getting education. What my education did, for example, is not only did it give me a skill set, but it connected me forever to a community of not only colleagues, but also to my professors. And what that did is that opened up doors for me to be able to negotiate forward progress. You can't get anywhere, I feel, by yourself independently, no matter who you are. One of the things that you will notice, whatever your favorite celebrity or guest is that you look at and you idolize, people will oftentimes say, hey, if it wasn't for my team, if it wasn't for my partner, if it wasn't for my creative whomever group, then I wouldn't be able to do what I do. And so, what I want us to hopefully have a takeaway from this is that we need to continue to create community. We need to continue to still be a part of networks. We need to, while we are working to create our own media outlets so that we can be in charge of our narrative as opposed to always being an afterthought. We need to still be intentional about connecting to others. So, I like to talk about my life and my journey, not just to do it, but I like to practice what I preach. So today, before I came to the studio to do my podcast, I was at Luminary. And I often speak about it, but Luminary is a place where it's a co-working space, but it's also a community of like-minded entrepreneurs that are comprised of mainly women, but also male allies. And so today there is a summit on leadership and making an impact. And one of the things that I took away from the meeting today was, in order for us to move forward, we have to acknowledge that we can't go it alone. We have to find a way to delegate, because no matter what you're doing, if you're thinking about music, for example, a one-man band might sound great theoretically. However, most music is best consumed when it is comprised of multiple people. So that is, you have a vocalist, you have percussion, you have strings, you have horns, you have keys, and all of these things together then make beautiful music, or have harmony, rhythm, or whatever. Yes, there are ways that you can do all of that from a computer screen or even from a phone. However, there is something that is uniquely magical that happens when you put musicians together that can collaborate, because whatever it is that you're doing, I feel, is elevated through community. And one of the things that I also took away from the morning session that I attended was that when you work in a collaborative community, you're able to have a shorter process to success, because someone that's done it before you, they're able to share their pitfalls, or they're able to share their lessons, or they're able to share their wins, so that if you are, for example, trying to make or create pizza sauce, toothpaste, a song, you will notice that if you go into whatever your favorite streaming service is, whether it is Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you get your music from, you will notice that there are all types of genres, and there's all types of artists under all types of genres. You will notice the same when it comes to toothpaste. When you go to your favorite store, whatever it might be, or drugstore, you will notice that there is not just Crest, there's Arm& Hammer, there is Hello, there is Colgate, and the list goes on. And the reason why I'm saying that, or pizza sauce, there's Ragu and Pregu and all the other are the names. The point is, there's a lot of different ones. So whatever your purpose and your passion is, understand that there is room for you at the table. You just have to have the vision and the consistency and the willingness to not just be excited about whatever it is that you are wanting to put out into the world, but you will notice that it is contagious. The passion that you have for building your brand, you will notice that other people that you either work with in some capacity or another, other people will notice what you're doing, and they'll say, "Hey, I saw you did a flyer," or "I saw you did a post." And if you want to meet or reach more people, like some feedback I got is, maybe you want to use lesser words, and or maybe you want to use punchier text. And in order for us to be able to grow and to elevate and to empower those in which that we work with, we have to be willing to take criticism, and we have to be willing to take feedback. Because if you are operating within a vacuum, you will notice that your process will be longer than it needs to be, or harder than it needs to be. But there's this idea that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, that if you know that there is a proven strategy or a proven blueprint for what it is that you want to do, yes, your particular perspective or spin on it is unique. But when it comes to the fundamental idea of building a business or building a brand, there are certain fundamentals that are going to be seen across the board as it pertains to delegation, leadership, and innovation. Those are things that are going to be the same across the board. So I started this podcast with the topic of fighting for our lives because I feel that that is exactly what we are going to have to do in order to continue doing what we love to do. I want to also encourage you to connect to somebody this week, whether it is a peer or whether it is a mentor or your partner. Connect to somebody and tell one person what it is you are trying to do, because in doing so, you'll get feedback and it'll be a perspective that you might not even have considered because, again, as I said, we are oftentimes not even aware of what our biases and or what our perspectives are because it is our coming from our own lived experiences. So I don't want us to be discouraged by the state of things, but I want us to remain involved, to remain vigilant, to remain connected, but to also to be intentional about creating what it is that we want to see, whether it is the change that we want to see, the brands that we want to see, the communities, the networks, the media brands, whatever it is. I feel we should continue to do that. But in doing so, we need to tap into the resources and the proven strategies that have worked for others, because we don't want to be stuck in the idea phase or stuck at the beginning stage or stuck at the intermediate stage. All of us, I feel, should be striving to evolve as not only people, but to evolve our brands, to evolve our messaging so that we can continue to not just scale for the purpose of scaling. But I know myself and others that are in the creator space as it pertains to entrepreneurship. We're not doing this just to do it. We're doing this because we want to make an impact, because we want to create jobs, because we want to open doors, and we want to provide opportunities that were not given to us. So we need to do that even more so now that systems that were previously put in place, whether it is DEI or whether it is affirmative action or whether it is equality or diversity or any of those words, inclusion, if when those things are under attack, yes, we need to dig in and, like I said, create, but we also need to be intentional about connecting. Let me know if any of what I am sharing, if it is something that resonates with you. Leave a comment on whatever platform that you are watching from, whether it is Instagram or LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook. Leave a comment. I am here in studio and I am under lights and I am at DSN Network, which is the Matrix Studios Network here in Manhattan, New York, specifically the financial district. But the reason why I take time to say that on every episode is because, one, I think it's important that everyone knows that I'm collaborating with a Black brand and a Black business, but also I want everyone to know that I'm doing so for the purpose of expanding and building brick by brick. And so in that effort, you can assist me by subscribing to my YouTube channel. And there you will see all of my newest content from both of my podcasts, this one and Red Lipstick Conversations. And what your comment does is it tells the algorithm and it tells sponsors that you want more, or this is something that you want to see more of. And even if what I am talking about, thank you, Ty, for affirming my messaging today. Even if what I am speaking about is not relevant to you and your personal experience, you might know somebody that what I am sharing is or could be relevant to. So I invite you to share my podcast with that person or with those people, because again, we can only move and continue to grow if we do so together. So again, I am your host, Tasha Ray, and hopefully you will tap in with your girl, me, on this coming Friday. So until next time, peace, love, and happiness, and all of the good things. And take a moment to breathe in, breathe out, and to just center yourself, because while all the madness is going on everywhere, we have to take care of ourselves. So if that means stepping away from the news for a moment to just get your grounding, do so, because whatever it is that you're doing, it is needed, it's necessary, and we need to do more of it. So I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.